Delighted to be at the launch of Ireland's National Youth Food Forum today. Of course, young people are critical stakeholders in Ireland's food system, and having a dedicated forum for youth engagement on agri-food strategy and on food system transformation is really important. I'd like to mention and thank IFIAD, who in collaboration with the department have advanced the idea of the National Youth Food Forum and will be providing the secretariat to this new group. So over the coming months, I suppose the ambition is that young people will arrange and participate in the Youth Food Systems Dialogue, and later this year we'll hold the Youth Food Summit.
Did we lose Sean there?
I think we might have lost him. So if you want to take over,
yeah,
unless he pops back on, we'll let him
do that. Yeah. Okay, so welcome everybody, and like my name is Charlie Spillane. I'm the chair of the Irish Forum for International Agricultural Development. So you're all very welcome here today. Myself as chair of IFIAD, or the Irish Forum, and Sean Bell from the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine, we're co-hosting the launch of the National Youth Food Forum in Ireland today, here in Ireland. And so we're delighted to see so many youth delegates that are existing, but also prospective attending, and we hope to see more in the future. So we've an exciting kind of lineup for today's launch event. I'll say a few words, then Sean, if Sean's back, he may have some additional words to say, and then we're going to hand over to Treasa Cadogan, who's the lead delegate for the Irish youth delegation that went to the World Food Forum in 2023. Then we have an invited presentation by Kazuki Kitaoka, who's the coordinator of the World Food Forum based in FAO in Rome. And so you're very welcome, and thanks for taking the time to join us, Kazuki. Then we'll basically have a Q&A on Kazuki's presentation. So if anybody has any questions, don't feel shy to ask them. And then we have a series of kind of reflections, essentially. Treasa and the other Irish youth delegates would give an Irish experience at the World Food Forum. Then an update from Harry Crowley. Harry has been instrumental really in the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine support to the engagement of youth in food systems in Ireland and globally. And so we can hear Harry's perspective. And then Patrice is the coordinator. Patrice Lucid is the coordinator of IFIAD, and she'll say a few words about the role of IFIAD, what IFIAD is. And so I don't really need to go into that. And also the governance of the National Youth Food Forum. And then we'll have some updates from the National Youth Food Forum members themselves, Treasa Cadogan, David Giles, really around next steps and proposed youth dialogue event in April 3rd. And then we'd have basically towards the end, we can have comments or discussion. If anybody has any questions or comments they want to communicate, you can use the Zoom chat and we can then discuss them verbally, or you can raise your hand and then you can discuss as well. So that's kind of how we'll kind of proceed. I'm going to hand over to Treasa in a moment, who's going to moderate this. But like I should say that like it's really critically important that there is a National Youth Food Forum in Ireland. At the whole kind of agriculture and food systems arena, its future clearly depends on the youth. And there's a declining interest in agriculture amongst youth. So there's a kind of in many countries, an aging population in the agricultural production kind of sector. But then in the broader kind of food system sector, there's a lot of interest in the youth. So trying to connect those up to get more youth engagement in charting the future of our kind of food systems would be important. If we look globally, like youth, if we look at the age from 15 to 24, by 2030, I think about 1.3 billion people on the planet will be in that age group. The youth populations have plateaued in most regions except Africa. So Africa in particular as a continent is going to have a very large youth population and growing over the next decades to 2030 and 2050. And that raises all sorts of questions around the youth engagement in agriculture, but also where do jobs come from? So how can jobs be generated in rural areas? And what's the future of employment or decent work in agriculture and also in agricultural value chain? So these are all kind of things that are pertinent to all kind of countries essentially. So I think it's really opportune, both from a national perspective in Ireland, but also from our IFIAD perspective and engagement with developing country partners, that we can connect up the youth food forums in Ireland with those of their counterparts in other countries as well. So I'm really delighted to see kind of this happening. So at that, I'm going to hand back to Sean, okay, because you're back again, I think, Sean. I can see you there. And so if you can kind of continue on from where you were, if you want, and then we can hand over to Treasa. Okay, so we're delighted to be co-hosting this IFIAD and the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine.
Apologies, I'm not sure what happened there, but look, I think you summed it up well, Charlie, and I think we're very pleased to be able to support this from the department's point of view. Our Food Vision 2030 strategy is based around the food systems approach, and I think it acknowledges that youth engagement is hugely important. And you give us some stats there, but I think, you know, certainly while farmers here in Ireland would tend to say that young farmers don't get enough support, certainly the government's ambition has always been to support young farmers, and I don't think there's any lack of interest among young people in farming and agri-food. And I think all along the range of the agri-food sector up to graduate level and so on, I mean, you see the interest in courses nationwide in agri-food and so on, the quality of people entering agri-food. So I think, you know, it's a bright future, and look at this is going to be a very useful engagement, I think, and great to see the National Youth Food Forum underway. So thanks.
Thanks, Sean. And so at that, I think we're going to hand over to Treasa, and like you're in charge from here on in, Treasa, yeah, and I can assist in any way you want. Okay, no worries. Okay.
Thank you very much, Charles and Sean. Hello all, I'm Díomh Céad Míle Fáilte. Welcome. I'm delighted to be moderating today's launch of the National Youth Food Forum, which it has been set out that this is a significant step for young people in Ireland working in the agri-food sector or involved in the sector. This is an essential move in shaping, our young people have an essential role in shaping the sustainable food systems. And this national chapter is a space for young people in the sector to learn, to collaborate, to share knowledge, and also to engage in policy processes. But before I get into the background as to how the Youth Food Forum in Ireland was set up, I would like to introduce Kazuki Kitaoka, the Global Coordinator for the World Food Forum, to share a little bit more about the World Food Forum and the role of these national chapters. So Kazuki, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks so much. And thanks to IFIAD for the kind invitation, and to the Department of Agriculture, and thanks for the kind introduction, Treasa. It's a real honor, and we are really feeling excited to be here at this first meeting on the national chapter of the Irish Youth Food Forum and Network. My name is Kazuki Kitaoka, and I'm the World Food Forum Global Coordinator. That's an initiative that was created in actually very recently, about 4 years ago, by the Youth Committee of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. It's one of the agencies of the UN that is dealing specifically with the transformation of our agri-food systems. And as Charlie and Sean have said, it's youth is very much at the center of what we are concerned about in terms of the future of the sector, the future of the agri-food systems overall, all the way from production to consumption and beyond, also on food waste and other issues. So youth really plays an extremely important role here, and in this vein, we came up with the idea that we should not only talk about youth in this sector, but we should actually start talking with youth, and things should be actually shaped by youth much more than they were in the past. So that was really the starting point of the conceptualization of the World Food Forum as part of the FAO. I have a small little presentation, if you allow me to just share my screen for a moment. I don't know if you can see it. Yes, okay, perfect. So For those who don't know the World Food Forum, just perhaps allow me a couple of words before we dive a little bit more into depth on what we are doing. And then, of course, Treasa is the much better person to talk about the Irish chapter. And I see other friends around the table, Patrice and David and others. So as I said before, the launch of the World Food Forum was really in 2021, so very recently. And it was launched as an independent and youth-led global network of partners that is facilitated and also hosted by the FAO in Rome. And why is it independent and why is it youth-led? Youth-led is, I think, quite clear. As I said before, youth has to play an important role, independent as well, as we wanted to make sure that this voice, the voice of youth in the different global governance fora that the FAO is hosting, has an independent and a voice that stands for itself, that stands on its own, that actually has its own identity, and that speaks for the future that they would like to see in our agri-food system. So with this in mind, the forum was really an aim to spark a global movement, a global network of youth leaders that themselves can empower other young people in this field of the agri-food systems, of course, in the overall under the overall chapeau of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals overall. And as I think we all know, the agri-food systems play an extremely important role in practically every single one of the SDGs. And I see here Charlie's beautiful SDG chart behind his in his background. We do see that there is an increasing recognition around the world that unless we tackle agri-food systems in a sustainable way, in a youth-led way, we will not be able to tackle poverty, we will not be able to tackle gender equality, of course, zero hunger, but also issues such as sanitation and water, our energy crisis, economic development and job creation, all the way to climate change and climate justice. So this sector is really absolutely essential for the achievement of the goals. And this is also why we think that this is this World Food Forum, but also every single national chapter that is being created by and for youth will play an essential role in bringing not only the sector forward, but also the national and global goals that we have set ourselves. So with that, we created this primarily as a youth platform in 2021. And it was just a year later that it was recognized, I think, that there needs to be some additions coming to this youth platform that was very vibrant, and we really saw a massive interest amongst young people in this sector from around the world. And these were two sectors, specifically science and innovation, to underpin really the discussions and the dialogues, the policies, the recommendations that came from youth, with scientific evidence and with new ideas in innovation. Of course, this goes hand in hand. This is a mutual benefit. Science benefits from the ideas of youth in this sector, and innovation very often stems basically from young people in this sector, be it directly in farming, be it in production sectors, be it consumers or other concerned parties. And then finally, and thirdly, there was a recognition that we need to also talk about investments. It is not enough that we are talking about solutions and policies. We also need to put the investments where the mouth is, and and strengthen investments in the agri-food sector. This was done together with an initiative of the FAO, the Hand-in-Hand Investment Initiative, and which has since 3 years now been one of the 3 pillars of the World Food Forum. So bringing these important parts and components together. On one side, youth, on the second, science and innovation, and thirdly, investment was seen as the way forward in which we can really find pragmatic solutions for the massive and daunting problems and challenges that we have in not only in the sector, but in our societies overall. And as you can see here, we have every year a theme that is being discussed with a lot of people and a lot of youth around the world. And this year's theme is Good Food for All, Today and Tomorrow. The past themes were hovering around healthy diets 2 years ago. The last year's was more on the climate. This year is a broader theme with, we hope, will encompass really all of the different concerns that young people have for the future of our agri-food systems as we strive for good and, of course, hopefully also even better food for all today as the challenges are immediate, and also tomorrow to consider the sustainability in this sector. Just some words on how the World Food Forum is being set up, and perhaps this is bringing some ideas, perhaps also for the Irish National Chapter. Our overall logical framework spans from awareness raising amongst young people to the engagement of young people to hopefully then having them active partners in the transformation of this sector. And how do we do that? This is essentially done through 5 different tracks. At the very center is a policy and action track, which we call the Youth Assembly, that creates the thematic agenda and priorities of the World Food Forum on an annual basis, and it's providing also the political and scientific guidance to the activities of the forum at the global level. Here we have, it is an assembly, of course, a lot of policy discussions on the interactions as well of the agri-food system and climate, desertification, biodiversity, but also non-environmental issues such as gender and others. And from the very starting point, the young people who are sitting in this youth assembly wanted to have not only a discussion on policy and recommendations, but they also wanted to link this to action and inspire activities in their own communities, in their countries. And here, of course, the national chapters play an essential role in the inspiration for such activities and for driving action forward to create the transformation and change in the context of the national agendas and policies. Linked to that, and also based on the recommendations that come from the Assembly, we have 2 tracks that look at innovation on one side to identify youth-led innovations, both from researchers and also from startup companies and young innovators that are ingenious in all countries in their respective agri-food environments. And on the other side, education. And education is really one of those essential issues. For those who have listened last year to President Higgins' address to the World Food Forum, he was also mentioning that unless education brings agri-food issues in a more systemic way to the forefront, how can we have policy discussions and innovators in this sector? So education is really an essential track here in this overall engagement strategy, and to create more awareness amongst those who perhaps are interested a bit in food, but are not so closely linked to the substantive discussions yet. We also use the universal language of culture, of youth culture in particular, to build awareness and to connect a much broader youth audience to the issues that we would like to discuss, be it food waste, or be it healthy diets, or be it issues in production. This culture track really reaches into all of the activities, be it in the assembly or in innovation and education. Those who were at the World Food Forum flagship event have seen that very much in person. But it's something that we try to have as a part of the overall communication and engagement strategy, also hopefully in all of the national chapters, such as in Ireland. And finally, this is something I'm not going to dwell too much on, because Treasa, I'm sure, is going to talk about Ireland here, is the localization strategy, where we hope to inspire as many national chapters as possible around the world to really make this a bottom-up and youth-led initiative that is driven by the needs, but also the desires of young people in countries, in regions, in localities, in communities, for a better agri-food system and a better food future for all. Now, all of this is happening, of course, throughout the year. We have a lot of activities through the year in the World Food Forum, but then it accumulates all in 1 week, where we bring together all the findings of the assembly, some of the achievements of the education track, the innovation track, and of course, a lot of culture, and the reports from different countries, what happened at the country level amongst youth chapters. And this flagship event this year is going to be from the 14th to the 18th of October. And I hope, of course, we all hope to have again, after 2 extremely strong Irish delegations in the last 2 years, to have again a very strong Irish delegation this year as well. And in addition to the 3 pillars that I mentioned before, youth, investment, and science innovation, we always also have, in addition, a specific caucus on indigenous youth from countries that bring their knowledge and their desires of indigenous food systems and agri-food systems to the table, that bring their concerns as well to the global assemblies. And for those who have been there last year and the years before, also bring a lot of culture and a lot of inspiration to the forum. In addition, this year, we are marking the midterm of the UN Decade on Family Farming, which is a decade that was created 5 years ago, and it's a 10-year, obviously it's a decade, so it's 10 years, we are now 5 years in. And one of the main pillars of the Decade on Family Farming is youth. And this is why the organizers of the decade are going to organize this year's midterm forum as a youth-led event. And they also asked us to bring it to the World Food Forum flagship week in October, with a lot of activities and discussions. Of course, also the review of what happened, what didn't happen around the UN Decade on Family Farming, and linking with not only the Youth Assembly, but also with youth-led innovation in the sector, and also with investment discussions. To give you a bit of an idea of what this flagship looks like, so last year we had about a bit more than 6,200 something people in person at the flagship in Rome and approximately 65,000 online. Of course, we hope that we can increase this in terms of size this year. As I said at the beginning, the aim is to create a global movement. So this is, of course, can just be the start. I'm sure that the Irish National Chapter will play an extremely important role, as Ireland has been playing an extremely important role already the last years at the World Food Forum. Just two mentions on the national chapters themselves. Ireland, of course, as a national chapter is not alone. We have quite a number of national chapters opening up, and all of them are providing platforms for young people in the national context to mobilize youth-led local action in their communities, in their sometimes in their parliaments, depending a little bit on the different systems that exist in the different countries, but always with the main objective of achieving a more sustainable agri-food system, an agri-food system that creates and empowers young people for a better food future. And just like the global setup, these national youth platforms are generally self-organized with some institutions at the core. So similar to IFIAD and others, there are usually some organizations that are driving this forward, but we do observe that these networks are often very vibrant, extremely multi-sector oriented, including farmers, in some cases including indigenous groups, in some cases including specific women caucuses and others. So this depends then very much on the priorities of the local network and the partners that exist in the national context. And where there is an FAO country office, usually the country office is also included or is facilitating some of these activities. So that would not be the case in Ireland, but as we are covering Ireland from headquarters in Rome. Generally, we have some guiding principles that we observe in all of the chapters that we have been accompanying so far. There is a common mission, I think, overall on the transformation of our agri-food systems and the leadership of youth and empowerment of youth. We really want to see self-organized and independent networks here that reflect truly the ideas and the inspiration coming from young people in open and inclusive spaces. And we have some model activities that we see in many countries happening around an assembly, perhaps on education, on innovation, on youth culture, as I mentioned before. And we also encourage local chapters to be self-sustaining as much as possible, be it in collaboration with the government, be it in collaboration with other partners. And this is just to give you a bit of an overview what we have, what we are observing at the moment in terms of representation of national chapters in different regions. And so you are in Ireland in a growing network here, and we have this year alone, I think, some 25 new national chapters sprawling around the world. So this is really a very exciting moment. With that, oh yeah, and this is an important last slide. Sorry, it was just put in at the last minute, but it's important, I think. So if you need support from our side as well, we are here, of course, to facilitate. We have national chapters blueprints that can facilitate perhaps some of your thinking process at the national level. These are, of course, just offers. We really would like to see things to be driven at the national level in the context of national policies, of course. We also offer national chapter workshops for networking amongst the different national youth leaders from different countries. And we have also here at the FAO a World Food Forum localization team that is supporting and, if necessary, guiding the operationalization of national chapters around the world. And with this and the final call for youth representative and observers for this year's global assembly, where we hope, of course, to get again a very strong Irish youth delegation at the World Food Forum. You see here in the middle, Treasa from 2 years ago. There was a very strong delegation last year as well. Of course, all of the statements and recommendations from youth are also all available on the World Food Forum website. I will close and with some pictures from the last years of the Irish representation at the Global Forum. And I'm really excited to see how this is now going to be translated into the national context in Ireland. And we stand ready to support you as you need it. And I'm personally extremely interested in seeing how you're going to shape this new network, this new chapter, but also what kind of activities you will be coming up with in the context of the Irish transformation of the agri-food systems. And with that, back to you, Treasa. And thanks again for inviting me. It's a real pleasure and a real honor.
Thank you very much. We're delighted to have you here. And that was a great and very interesting presentation for people, to give people a better idea of how the World Food Forum works, and then also how Ireland's national chapter will slot into that global platform. Does anyone have any initial questions for Kazuki? Or if not, we can wait until the Q&A at the end if people want to share their thoughts then. I see there's a comment, but I think Victor is already replying with some information in the group chat. So if people want to write into the chat, there's a number of us replying as we go along. But with that, so following on from that, I'll give a little bit of context as to how the Irish National Chapter came about. And it's been inspired through a build-up of events over the last couple of years, starting with the Food Systems Summit National Dialogues in 2021, which engaged a number of young stakeholders. And then there was the launch of the Food Vision 2030, which committed to increasing youth engagement in the sector. And then, as was mentioned, for the past 2 years, the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine have supported 2 delegations of diverse young people to attend the World Food Forum flagship event in Rome. And I was honoured to be a part of both delegations, and it was a fantastic experience, getting the opportunity to engage with so many young stakeholders from all over the world. And then last year, I co-moderated Ireland's side event, which Irish and Kenyan youth delegates shared their experience in food system transformation. So collaborations like that have come up, and it's very interesting. And which conversations from the World Food Forum have inspired this national forum, seeing how domestic and international platforms bring together young people who are interested in agriculture, environmentalism, in order to formulate a pragmatic route forward for agriculture to reach its climate goals, but also to address crucial issues that persist in the sector, like the lack of young people entering farming and the food system, which was mentioned earlier, with the staggering facts of how the age of young farmers is declining and the age of average farmers is increasing. And after a few months of discussions and planning and the last 2 years of the delegations, we're here today at the launch. But first, I'd like to say a big thank you to the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine and IFIAD for the continued support in establishing the forum and for providing the opportunity to attend the World Food Forum, because without these platforms and championing us, none of this would have been possible. And with all that in mind, I'd like to hand over to David Giles, who will share a little bit more about the National Youth Food Forum's first event and also his experience attending the World Food Forum. David, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Treasa. So yeah, like Treasa, I've had the great honor of attending the flagship event as part of Ireland's delegation for the last 2 years. And I really have been encouraged and inspired by seeing how the World Food Forum brings together thousands of young people, both physically and virtually, to consider the future of our agri-food systems. And through this launch, we're marking an Irish pin on the map of national chapters, which, as we heard there, is growing across all regions. And what we hope to be able to do from the Irish perspective is look at um, the local, the national, the regional priorities, input, solutions from a youth perspective, and then how that can map to what is happening in the Rome-based agencies on food and agriculture. It's also been great to see Ireland as one of the first countries to engage with the youth delegation to the flagship event in Rome, and also in their work supporting young people from the Global South to participate in the flagship event. So we're delighted to carry this momentum forward in the form of the launch. So then to speak a little bit to our first dialogue, which we're very, very excited for, which will be taking place on the 3rd of April in Airfield Estate. So on this front, we've taken inspiration from the department-led food vision groups, and also from the strategic dialogue on agriculture, which has been led by President von der Leyen of the European Commission, which has aimed to address the polarization of agriculture within the EU, especially in light of the recent protests on agriculture across a number of member states. So our group, we hope to have a diverse group of young people from really across the food system, young people working in the policy sphere, in advocacy, in research, in primary production, and in the private sector to really create a representative think tank, which will then hopefully our recommendations and our output will reflect the diversity of thought that we have going into it. We also hope to have a skills building workshop with the group's members and a communication and dialogue expert, which will equip the young people to be able to engage constructively and critically in dialogue, particularly when engaging with government officials and on international stages. We also are hoping to preface each meeting with an expert speaker on food systems. So we're currently working on all of this behind the scenes, which will help direct the conversation and on the meeting of young people and make sure that we can accurately engage with the questions. So then to give an insight to some of the questions that we'll be hoping to address. So how can we balance Ireland's role as a major food producer with both domestic and international climate commitments? How can we as young people help improve the position of primary producers within the overall agri-food supply chain, taking into account transparency and fairness? 3, how can young people become more engaged with farming, fisheries, and see rural Ireland as offering them opportunities which are sometimes more attainable in urbanised areas? 4, how can Ireland play a more tangible role in the development of sustainable food systems internationally and share our experience of agricultural development with nations currently undergoing this journey? And then finally, how we can streamline our work with that of the other national chapters, that of the World Food Forum tracks, which we heard about from Kazuki there, and also with the theme annually. So in this case, with Food for All today and tomorrow, from an Irish youth perspective, spanning diet, nutrition, access, supply, and sustainability. And when you've discussed these topics, and hopefully this is only the beginning of it, we're hoping to develop a strategic document which summarizes the group of the views of the group rather, and can then be used in engagements with both government organizations and private sector to better inform the development of policies that accurately reflect the views of young people. So we're very excited about the launch. Patrice hopefully will be able to share the link for expressions of interest, and we'll be sharing this more widely. So those of you who can think of Irish young people who may be interested in participating in this, we hope you'll be able to share it with them, and that you'll be able to follow along with the developments as this initiative grows in Ireland. And I'll pass back to Treasa now. Thanks so much.
Thanks, David. We're all really, really looking forward to this National Youth Dialogue. So please do share the link around once it's popped into the chat, and you'll probably see it floating around LinkedIn and X and everything that comes next. But I would like to next invite Caitlin, who is also a member of the delegation who attended the World Food Forum for the first time last year, to briefly share her experience about being part of the group and also part of the network that we're growing. Caitlin?
Thank you very much, Treasa. And yeah, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I think David summarised it very well there, just about what we've done so far and what our plans are going forward. So yeah, as Treasa mentioned, I was lucky enough to also be a member of Ireland's youth delegation that attended the World Food Forum last year. It was a fantastic event. I think Kazuki has highlighted beautifully the connections that were made and the amount of young people that were there. And what I took from the event really was the diverse amount of young people there from all over the world, but really the shared challenges that we're all facing. In our event that we co-hosted with the Kenyan delegations, we were speaking about models of youth engagement, and they highlighted the challenges faced in Kenya, which is the lack of young people interested in going into farming. They said young people see farming as something for older people. And I think we were all nodding our heads in the room because Ireland is facing the same thing. So it was a fantastic opportunity to learn how other countries are engaging young people in their food system and to share how we are doing that. And we can, of course, take those learnings and apply them where they fit in our countries. And I think with the work that we are going to carry out throughout this year with the National Youth Food Forum, we hope to bring even more learning to next year's World Food Forum and like this, continue that knowledge sharing. I know there was a question asked in the chat box there about knowledge sharing and how national chapters can share knowledge. Of course, for those national chapters that attend in person, that's a huge opportunity to stand face to face and chat to other delegates, but attending online can also give those opportunities because you hear throughout the side events and the various assemblies what young people are doing in their countries. I've found that the World Food Forum is really a place for young people to speak and for young people not only to speak to each other, but also to speak to important stakeholders and policymakers, which is an absolute privilege at such a global level. So yeah, thank you very much, Treasa, for sharing. And as Treasa said as well, thank you to IFIAD and to the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine for giving us the opportunity and for giving that opportunity to members of the Global South as well.
Thanks, Caitlin. We're really looking forward to bringing that energy and knowledge from the World Food Forum to the national chapter and hopefully kind of recreate it in our own smaller way. And definitely bringing that knowledge sharing in. And if there's any other delegates who attended the World Food Forum, I think I can see a few names. If any of you want to share your experience now or at the end, during the Q&A, we'd be more than delighted to hear from you. But next, I'd like to welcome Harry O'Crowley, who's the International Development Lead at the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine, and who is also one of the biggest supporters in the Irish youth delegations attending the World Food Forum. So Harry, the floor is yours.
Treasa, thank you so much. And it's great to see you guys again. And you mentioned a number of the delegates. So the ones I can see are Treasa and Noel and Devon, Caitlin and David, and anybody lurking in the background, I'll catch you later. But I suppose just to keep it kind of on message, 4 years ago I had a coffee in Aventino with Kazuki, and it was before we kicked off on this, and we said, how can we engage? And that was the key point. And Kazuki mentioned that it really had to come initially from the government, had to have that somebody had to champion it within the government, and it had to be, that was key to this. So I suppose to put a certain context on it, the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine has responsibility for Ireland's engagement with FAO. We've a small delegation, we've limited bandwidth, so we have a very focused I suppose point of entry where we actually engage with FAO, and they are on sustainable livestock production, food systems transformation, and youth engagement. And that has stood us very well insofar as that we've been able to get quite deep and into the grain of what's required on those three subjects. So I suppose in terms of the World Food Forum and its rationale, I mean, Kazuki mentioned food education as being something that's really important, and we have Devon from Feast Ireland on there, who was a self-proclaimed food provocateur, but he is par excellence, and the amount of young people that he is engaged with in primary and secondary schools, it really goes, a lot of it goes unnoticed, but it's at that level of engagement that we have to start evangelizing. We have another young delegate who's not with us today, Adam Mullen, who's from the student pantry in University College Galway. If you ask him about last year or 18 months ago, what did SDG 12.3 mean? He'd look at you in the face. Now he's all over it because he is one of an extraordinary young advocates for tackling food waste. And what he's doing in Galway is again at an elite level. But I suppose really what we're trying to get to is in terms of the forum and engaging, is that this is all about access. This is all about giving young people an opportunity to have a voice. At the end of all the, when we sit back, most of the old people in this room will be long gone, and the rest of the young people in this room will be still talking about responsible consumption and production. That's the cycle of life, the circle of life. You guys are going to be talking about this for years to come. You're impacted about what we're doing now, so it's imperative that you're in the room. And I talked about food systems transformation as being a key point for Ireland. Looking at it in its whole, the food systems transformation is a prerequisite for the delivery of the Sustainable Development Goals. The Sustainable Development Goals and the delivery of those will not happen without food systems transformation. That is a truism, and we have to start looking at it in those kind of context. So, it's imperative for young people to be able to be involved in strategy and policy making around how we harness the power of food systems transformation for climate action and all those things that are coming at us like a runaway freight train. President Higgins was the star performer at the 2023 World Food Forum. Extraordinary and proud moment for us all at the delegation and from the officials who were there. But he said something really important, and it's something that resonates with our Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine, and it's why we take a particular view on this. Up until now, it was always a case of, let's have a youth delegation, but we'll put them all together on a single panel and they can talk about all those nice little things about themselves. And we won't integrate them because they know diddly squat about anything. So just leave them out there. But over a period of time, and we took a view back in 2021, and Treasa mentioned it about the National Food System Dialogues in advance of the UN Food System Summit. Treasa was actually at the leading edge that she actually hosted her own independent dialogue, if I recall, in UCC. So, but one of the things we did was we tried to integrate young people as standalone experts on each of the panels where we could. But President Higgins brought it a step further, and what he said was, now it's not just sufficient to invite young people to be part of the conversation. We have to be able to resource them adequately so that they can accept that invitation. So in that regard, Ireland, over the last couple of years, has provided funding to the World Food Forum to bring delegates from the Global South to participate as, in a full, unhindered way. I think the figures were something like 91 delegates from 46 countries last year. We've given significant increase in the funding for 2024, and those numbers will be enhanced. It is a fundamental part of what we're doing. Not only are we looking at food systems transformation and youth engagement at a national level, we're looking at food systems transformation and youth engagement at the global multilateral level, and that is hugely important. Treasa talked about her she and Noel were moderating with Minister Hackett the side event with the Kenyan chapter. This level of engagement with youth chapters from around the world will only grow. It's fundamental to have that network of understanding, the sharing of knowledge. Ireland does not know everything. We think we know everything a lot of the time, but we do not know everything. We have as much to learn as much to share, and I think it's really important that those linkages and those outreach to other chapters will become part of what the chapter does when it's up and running. I suppose the role of what's the role of government in this? Well, we're providing the framework, and we're bringing the young people to the door of access. We're going to try and open the door, but like Moses and the tablets of stone, we're not going to go to the promised land. You guys have to do it yourselves. You need to take ownership. You need to stick the ball under your jumper and run with it as fast as you can, because time is not on our side on this, and we're facing global climate action. 1.5 degrees is a real and present danger. We have to so it's imperative that young people get up and run and take ownership of this, because that's what's going to happen down the track. You guys are going to have to do it. What I'll just to conclude, just to say that the department is there to support with IFIAD. IFIAD and Patrice have been really supportive in trying to get this up and running. Airfield 2 have given us commitment for the rest of the year, and thanks to Caitlin, who was on our team last year. All I'll say to you is the very best of luck. We're here to support you. We're not going to hold your hand. We're not going to direct you. It is really up to the young people of Ireland now to take ownership of this forum and to drive it hard and look for really demonstrable deliverables at the end of it. So back to you, Treasa. Thanks.
Thanks, Harry, and thank you for the support the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine gives us, and for highlighting how DAFM continues to engage youth nationally and globally. And with that, I'd like to invite Patrice, who is the coordinator of IFIAD and another big supporter of us in the National Youth Food Forum, to share the role and how they're engaging with us. Patrice?
Well, thank you, Treasa. So yes, I'm the coordinator of IFIAD, which is the Irish Forum for International Agricultural Development. And we are a multi-stakeholder network in Ireland, and we're made up of the different Irish organisations engaged in international agriculture. So our members include actually the Department of Agriculture, Department of Foreign Affairs, Irish NGOs, researchers, universities, private sector and farmers' organisations. So all the different stakeholders we hope to see on the Youth Forum also. And the main role of IFIAD is to support resilient, equitable, sustainable agriculture, food and nutrition security. Although we're mostly focused on the international side of agriculture, we have a strong domestic and local link also through our membership of the forum. So of course, we're delighted to host the Youth Forum. And as Kazuki and Harry mentioned, the Youth Forum, it's intended to be very much self-led and governed by the young people themselves and be independent. The main role for IFIAD will be to support the Youth Forum, especially with coordination, backstopping and support for logistics, such as event planning and resources. And we're also here to support learning and capacity building for the youth engagement and linking youth forum members to opportunities that may arise domestically and internationally. And David Giles has also highlighted some of the events that are anticipated for the forum, such as dialogues, guest speakers, and capacity building. Then in terms of governance, the Youth Forum will be hosted under the umbrella of IFIAD as a task group. And these are subgroups that are within IFIAD. And IFIAD is a member-led organisation under the auspices of our steering committee. And so membership for the Youth Forum will be open to everyone, and we'll be seeking nominations for chair and co-chair to steer the group on the objectives and activities of the Youth Forum. And luckily, we already have an initial group convened who've started preparations for today's launch and for the upcoming dialogue on the 3rd of April. So I really want to thank Treasa, Caitlin, David and Noel, who've been really great in getting the ball rolling and keeping the momentum of the World Food Forum going. And we've been meeting weekly, and we'd love more people to join us. So I'll share around expression of interest form also after this meeting. So that's it from me, and I look forward to more people joining the group and for our activities during the year. Thanks.
Thank you, Patrice. Thanks for highlighting how vital of a IFIAD is in this Youth Food Forum. We're running a little bit close to time now, but we are going to open the floor to if anyone has any questions or any comments or thoughts. And please do share around the expression of interest form, or you can email us with any questions or thoughts you have in case you do have to run off. So if you want to raise your hand and ask any questions, anyone can ask any of us.
Hello. Actually, I have questions. After submitting our applications, what's the next step? If you please explain for us, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your question. So the expression of interest form, if you want to submit your applications to that, and we'll be going through those applicants in preparation for them to take part in the National Dialogue in April. The spaces for the National Dialogue are slightly limited, so hopefully we can include everyone, but if not, you'll definitely be invited on to the next events and you'll be kept on our email list. So you should hear back from us within a number of weeks, potentially like 2.5 weeks, to hear if you'll be attending the dialogue in April. I hope that helps. Also keep an eye on our social media for other opportunities that are coming up, because we'll also be sharing the World Food Forum opportunities that Kazuki highlighted, 1 or 2 of them that are coming up.
Treasa, there's Michelle NN has a question there called "Thanks for the link." Is it specifically for young people?
Yes, so young people under the age of 35, so we're quite broad. Absolutely, if you're anyway involved in the agri-food systems, please do put in for it.
And just to like, it would be great to get if the youths on this forum could distribute to other youths as well, to kind of spread the word, because it would be great to get a diversity of different perspectives from different chapters of youth around Ireland. So do feel free to kind of distribute and disseminate the opportunity to anybody that's young under the age of 30 that might want to contribute or engage in this.
Yeah, just to amplify what Charlie's saying, we have a very active youth population in particularly in our universities. So if you're involved, and I see Jiang is on from UCD and Charlie obviously from University of Galway, take the opportunity to evangelize, because it's only when we start spreading the word that people will get to hear about it. And I think that it's that powerful push on to the next level is what we're looking for. So use every network you have to evangelize about the new National Youth Food Forum.
And Devon has put a comment in there saying, looking forward to seeing the National Youth Food Forum grow and develop over the coming weeks and months. All big changes start at grassroots level with creative and inspiring minds at the core. We'll be sure to share the word with primary, secondary and third level schools. So it's like, it's, as Harry indicates, it's, and Treasa also, and everybody, it's quite broad. Like the more young people, the better that engage, the better for the future of food systems.
And just to jump in again, just in September, we're looking to have a National Youth Food Summit. It's a commitment that was given under the Food Vision 2030, and we're working very closely with Caitlin and Airfield, and hopefully we'll get that bedded down. And the idea would be, and to Devon's point, we will have sessions that will be geared for primary schools, sessions geared for secondary schools, and a combination of other kind of areas of interest and bespoke for a particular age group, even for dogs.
I just see Isabel's question there as well, just asking for if you want to volunteer for the group. So if you want to put in your expression of interest to be a part of the consultations, and then from there we'll be kind of expanding the network and the volunteers involved in this.
I think Isabel's question might have been in relation to the link shared by Victor, So the World Food Forum Youth Representatives, that's the nomination, but for the National Youth Food Forum that Patrice chaired, you can just apply.
Thanks, Caitlin. No one else has any questions? I think we might wrap it up and say thank you so much to everyone for coming. It's been a fantastic launch, and please do share the link and the expression of interest around to everyone, because we want to try and get a diverse, geographical diverse and interest diverse as we can from around the country to attend and to take part in this going forward, and particularly with the number of events that are coming up. So thank you all so much. Please keep an eye on our social media and email us if you have any other questions or comments.